Industrial companies as well as small and medium-sized businesses need chemical products for a large variety of applications. In most cases, these chemicals are supplied by special transports. No matter how useful they are, all chemical products can have hazardous properties. For this reason, they need to be used properly and, of course, stored safely. For instance, different chemicals, as the ones being delivered here, are not allowed to be held available together for more than 24 hours. Hazard identifications inform at a glance what the hazards are which are posed by a chemical. It's important to know that different labels have to be used for the transport on the one hand and for the storage and application of the chemical products. What is important for you as you work in the warehouse are the hazard pictograms and their signal words, which can be found directly on the packaging and containers of the chemical products on the other hand. The signal word warning identifies a chemical that presents only a minor hazard. The signal word danger warns you of a serious hazard. Let's take a closer look at the hazard pictograms. The hazard pictogram with the exclamation mark warns against substances that can cause irritations to the eyes, skin, and respiratory system, or are classified as harmful. The pictogram showing the skull and crossed bones identifies chemicals that are toxic and pose fatal health risks. Even minute quantities of these substances can cause serious damage to health or even be fatal. They pose a danger to life when they are swallowed, inhaled, or come in contact with the skin. This pictogram is used, for example, to identify substances that can cause cancer or which are harmful to an unborn child. The symbol also warns of substances that can cause allergies when inhaled or which cause long-term damage to health. The hazard pictogram with the gas cylinder warns against gases and aerosols under pressure. If gas cylinders are exposed to heat, they can explode. If they are destroyed by a fire, they can even turn into a highly dangerous missile and fly hundreds of meters. The pictogram with the flame warns against flammable and spontaneously flammable chemicals. Especially chemical liquids and their vapors are flammable. They can cause fires, deflagrations, and also explosions. This hazard pictogram indicates that the chemical is oxidizing and thus is a hazardous substance that can cause flammable substances to burn even in the absence of air. This hazard pictogram is used to warn against chemicals with a corrosive effect. Chemicals labeled in this way cause burns to the skin and eyes of humans, or can lead to serious eye damage. They also can have a corrosive effect on metals. Substances labeled with this pictogram present an explosion hazard. The explosion can be caused by heat, impact, or friction. And finally, the pictogram with the environment symbol identifies chemicals that are harmful to ecosystems. Such environmentally hazardous substances, in particular, must not enter surface or groundwater. Now you know the hazard pictograms that provide a first hint regarding the hazard. You can find detailed information on the hazardous properties in the hazard and precautionary phrases. The new employee of our exemplary company is still horrified when he thinks of the severe problems that existed in the warehouse of his former employer. The warehouse was not labeled and was accessible to anyone. The poor lighting made it much more difficult to work in the warehouse. The condition of the shelves also presented a safety risk. They were often overloaded and partly even damaged. A great number of chemicals was sitting next to one another in an unorganized way, not giving any consideration as to whether they could be stored together safely. Dripping water affected the packaging. Sometimes even a hazardous substance leaked out, with no collecting trough to be seen anywhere. The risk of a fire or sudden explosion was great. What a relief that the new company keeps a constant eye on safety. Chemical warehouses are only allowed to be entered by persons who are authorized to do so. Indispensable for occupational safety, personal safety equipment. This always includes work clothes which cover the whole body, as well as safety shoes with steel caps. Depending on the hazardous substances and storage conditions, a hard hat and safety goggles along with protective gloves may also be required. In every warehouse, alarm regulations specify how to behave in an emergency. An important principle for safe storage: there are chemicals that can be stored together while others have to be stored separately. For details, refer to the joint storage table. In this table, the hazardous substances are divided into storage classes. Storage classes group chemicals with common hazard properties and protective measures. To find out which storage class a hazardous substance belongs to, refer to the safety data sheet or ask the manufacturer. There is a warehouse sector for each storage class in the warehouse. The joint storage table tells you which hazardous substances must be stored separately. You see what substances may only be stored together. The green arrays let you know which substances can be stored together. For example, aerosols with combustible solids. In addition to the provisions concerning joint storage, there are other requirements that apply to the warehouse in compliance with regulations. The shelving system must be stable and clearly structured. The chemical containers are stored in such a way that they cannot fall apart or fall down. The ideal warehouse is bright and well ventilated. Freely accessible escape routes, emergency exits, and fire extinguishers are a matter of course. In the case that a leakage should occur, collecting troughs and absorbing material are readily available. It makes sense that smoking is forbidden in a chemical warehouse. For health protection reasons, eating and drinking is also not permitted here. Containers of chemicals can also be stacked. But caution! If they are stacked incorrectly or too high, the stacks are as unsafe as a house of cards. Safe stacking means a stack should not exceed 3 meters in height. The containers at the bottom must be stable enough to bear the weight of the containers above them. Certain containers, such as self-supporting IBCs, are not allowed to be stacked. Hazardous substances can also be stored outdoors. If they are combustible gases, as is the case here, the covered storage area must be identified as a hazardous area. A requirement which the former employer of our new employee mostly did not meet. Note that sources of ignition such as open flames and mechanically generated sparks are prohibited in a hazardous area. Electrical devices can be sources of ignition too, and are therefore not allowed either. Important: gas cylinders may only be transported and stored in a secured condition. They are either chained or placed in storage boxes. The valve of a gas cylinder must always be protected with a cap. It is generally allowed to store chemicals also in workrooms, such as workshops. In this case, they are to be stored in safety cabinets. Our new employee remembers that storing of chemicals in the workshop of his previous employer was associated with great risks. Chemicals can be stored hazard-free in safety cabinets that are fire-resistant. Depending on the hazardous substances, these cabinets should also be connected to a ventilation system. Every safety cabinet must contain a sufficiently large collecting trough. The cabinet doors must be self-closing in the event of a fire. As a warehouse professional, you make an important contribution to protecting everyone's health, the environment, and the plants in your company by storing chemicals properly.